Hello, this is Steve Sessions, CEO of the Sessions Group. Welcome. We've got a great treat today. We've got Mike Felderman, who is an expert in insurance, specifically focused on commercial real estate. So Mike, it's great to have you here. And Mike has helped us. I can't tell you how many owners he's helped save money and also protect and provide greater coverage because of his services. So Mike, welcome, and so let's get right into it. An owner is looking at buying a property or has a property. What do they need to understand and what should they be aware of as it relates to risk?
You want to define risk to yourself. There's a lot of different definitions. Google it, come up with the definition of risk, and it'll go to a lot of different areas. If we think in terms of a building owner, risk is basically, in my point of view, it's identifying loss exposures.
Okay.
What circumstances exist in which a loss to your building can occur.
Okay. And so where do we go from here? Let's get right after it.
Okay, what we want to do is, in my view, where you should start, whether you're buying the building, whether you've owned it for 20 years, you need to do a concise analysis of what those loss exposures are. Okay, you can't just sit there and say to yourself, I got insurance, I'm covered. And that's what you see a lot of. There's a flood, what do you mean I have no coverage? And you saw whether it's Hurricane Katrina down in New Orleans, or whether it's a building burning, up the block. It's a residential apartment complex, which you see a lot of. Oh, there's no problem, I got insurance coverage. You got to analyze your losses. Don't accept, oh, my insurance will cover it, okay, and then move forward from there. But you can't do anything until you've analyzed and know what your loss exposures are.
Okay, so once you've analyzed it and you understand what your risk exposures are, then what does an owner need to do? Do they need to pass that off or retain it, or what are your thoughts?
To me, the most important area then, moving forward, is what's your comfort level? Your comfort level of accepting the risks or accepting these loss exposures. You can accept it. You can just say, I don't want to pay for insurance for that particular exposure. I can handle it if there's a loss. You can pass it on. Insurance basically being the number one way. Or you can avoid it. I don't think most of you are in this business to avoid it. Avoiding it might involve selling your building. I don't think that's reasonable. So accept or pass it on are really the two options.
So really, you've got to determine as an owner as how well you want to sleep at night. If you're taking on a lot of that risk, assuming that risk, then you're not going to sleep very well at night. So that's really a critical component here.
Right. Everything to do with risk and insurance and all this that we're going to be talking about is, can I go to sleep over the weekend when no one's working? My building's open. If it burns to the ground on a Saturday night, am I asleep? And when I wake up Sunday and find there was an issue that I have no problems, it was covered. I realize I have a deductible. I've accepted some of the exposure. We can talk about what level I want to accept. Do I want to accept $5,000? Do I want to accept $25,000? Okay. But the bottom line is, if it burns to the ground or if there was a flood, did I make a conscious decision? And to me, I always think in those terms. Did I make a conscious decision on how I was going to react to that kind of exposure?
Okay. So the last point on this initial video here series is, again, when we're talking about analyzing risk. What does that mean to an owner? How is he going to analyze risk? Can you just go through maybe just a few steps as to, what does an owner need to be aware of to do that?
Some simple things. Am I in a flood zone? Reality is, the flood people hate me using the term flood zone because everybody's in a flood zone. But am I in a high risk flood zone, a high hazard flood zone?
Okay.
If I own the building outright, which some people do, I don't have a lender pushing me and demanding flood insurance. So I want to analyze what's my exposure, what's my potential loss, do I want to cover that? I want to talk about loss of business income. What if I have a tenant that maybe there's a small fire and my tenant goes under? Okay, well, I accept the loss of that monthly rental income. Okay, do I want to force some issues onto my tenant? Do I want to take them on myself? Okay, if I'm going to have a fire, pretty much everybody out there is going to have insurance to cover fire, that type of thing. But what about, again, we talked loss of income. What about some ordinance or laws? What about if there's laws been passed that changed what's required? There's no grandfathering, your building's burned to the ground. What kind of exposures do I have? What's out there, and how can I analyze and take care of covering those exposures? That's
great. So let's go ahead and conclude this series, this first series. Thank you so much. And again, what we need to do here is, if you have any questions or comments, leave it down below. And but if you want to shoot us a question, we're happy to answer that or talk to you directly. So again, this is going to be the first of a video series on commercial insurance. And we look forward to having you stay in tune and to learning more. And so, Mike, thanks again for this great.
Thanks. We'll get into more detail as we move forward.
Perfect. Thank you so much.